Aer Lingus and IALPA, the main pilots union, will brief the Labour Court separately today on the pay dispute that has already impacted tens of thousands of customers. This glimmer of hope comes one day before the pilots are due to begin an indefinite work to rule. Willie Walsh is Director General of International Air Transport Association based in Geneva. He knows Aer Lingus well, having served as its chief executive as well as leading International Airlines Group, to which Aer Lingus belongs. He's also a former pilot, having begun his career flying for Aer Lingus. Welcome to Morning Ireland, Willie Walsh.
Good morning.
Now, do you believe that these visits to the Labour Court today by the two sides, albeit separately, are any cause for optimism that this dispute can be resolved before thousands more passengers are discommoded?
I think you've always got to be optimistic, but quite honestly, I see the situation being extremely difficult for Aer Lingus. Particularly when you look at its financial performance in the context of the other airlines in IAG. It's got the weakest operating margin. Employee costs in Aer Lingus are already higher as a percentage of total cost than all of the other airlines. It's at about 23% of their cost base. And the airline is highly seasonal. So I think the situation for the management is going to be extremely complex, and I see very little room for them to manoeuvre given the demands that pilots have made.
So what you're saying is that Aer Lingus cannot afford to pay anything close to the 24% that the pilots are looking for?
No, absolutely not. I think the impact that it would have on the future financial performance of the airline would seriously would seriously damage the investment or any future investment in the airline.
And we have heard about that IAG may withhold investment. How serious a prospect is that for Aer Lingus?
Well, I think it's happening. You've already seen that aircraft that were due to go into Aer Lingus have gone to other airlines within the group. IAG has the option of placing aircraft in other airlines, or indeed, given the demand that exists for airlines, for aircraft today, I think you could see IAG look to dispose of some of the aircraft that were due to go into Aer Lingus. So I think the situation is very, very risky, and I'm sure all of the employees in Aer Lingus watching what's going on will be deeply concerned, not just for the impact that it's having on customers, but also for the potential impact that it could have on the future of the airline.
I think one commentator the other day called it existential for Aer Lingus. Would you go that far?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, to be honest with you, because the industry is extremely challenging. I think Aer Lingus has done a good job up until the period of the pandemic, was significantly weakened during that period because of the financial impact and has been clawing its way back. But as I said, its performance is weak relative to the other airlines in IAG. And I think the prospect for future investment would be seriously undermined if Aer Lingus was to concede anything close to what the pilots are demanding.
And yet IAG profits for last year were up 174% on the previous year. Is there an argument here that perhaps the group could be a little bit more generous to Aer Lingus and help them through this?
I don't think so. I think the group was structured in a way that each of the airlines within the group had to stand on its own 2 feet and perform and justify the capital investment that would be required. I think the other airlines in the group have recovered much more strongly, particularly the Spanish airlines. And I would expect that when IAG is looking to the future and where it wants to invest, it will be looking away from Aer Lingus.
And of course, the pilots say that they did basically keep Aer Lingus afloat during COVID, and they are saying that these other airlines have received far larger increases for pilots, some up as far as 50%. Is that the case?
No, I don't believe so. And you've got to give credit to everybody in the airline. I think it's wrong to say one particular group kept the airlines going. Everybody made sacrifices through that period. It was clearly the deepest crisis the industry has ever seen. But if you look at the cost base of the airlines, I think the thing that jumps out at me is that if you combine employee costs and fuel costs, Aer Lingus that represents 54% of their cost base, which is much higher than the other airlines in the group. And there's two aspects to that. Employee costs are, as I said, at 23%, are higher than the average of the group. But the fuel costs, which traditionally are the highest cost element of an airline's cost base, are very much dependent on the aircraft. And if you don't get new aircraft and invest in new aircraft, well, then those fuel costs will increase as well. So it's, as I said, the future does not look very promising if these costs are not addressed. And, a cost increase for pilots wouldn't just stop at pilots, because you can imagine what the other employees would feel like if pilots were seen to get these huge increases that they're demanding. I think you could expect further disruption down the road as other employees look to copy that.
And as everyone says, this dispute will have to be resolved. At the moment, the gap is so wide, you could drive a truck through it. How do these disputes tend to get resolved then? Will productivity have to be part of the resolution here?
I would think so, yes. And how they tend to get resolved elsewhere is you have independent assessment of the case. Now, in the case of Aer Lingus and the pilots, I understand there's already been 2 independent reports which has made recommendations for increases for pilots, which have been rejected by the pilots. So typically you would see this external sort of intervention lead to a resolution. But given that it has failed to date, I think it's going to be very difficult to see how this will be resolved. So, you've got to have huge sympathy for customers who are planning to travel, because the disruption looks like it could be significant and ongoing for some time.
What reputational damage would you say, Willie Walsh, this dispute is likely to cause for the Aer Lingus brand among customers?
Yeah, very significant. Customers don't like to see their plans disrupted. They want to have a guarantee that when they book to travel that they'll be able to do so. This will disrupt the plans of tens of thousands of families, maybe even more, around Ireland who are looking to get away for a break during the summer. So it's big reputational damage.
And as a former pilot yourself, do you have some sympathy for the pilots in this dispute?
I would struggle to have sympathy. I think looking for 24% pay increase is way out of line with anything that I've ever seen before.
Now, in your own job as Director General of IATA, you've been focusing on rebounding, the airline industry rebounding after COVID. Is it back to pre-COVID levels yet, flights? I was just looking at FlightAware and there was 15,000 flights in the air. Are we back to what we were in 2019 yet?
Yeah, globally we are, but it's not the same in every part of the world. The Asia-Pacific region is still lagging behind other parts of the world. That's principally to do with flights into and out of China, which remain disrupted. So flights between China and the US are only at about 20% of where they were in 2019. But if you aggregate the performance across the world, yes, we're above where we were in 2019.
Do you have any opinion on the passenger cap at Dublin Airport, which is something that exercises the airlines here? They're looking for 40,000 up from the current level of about 29. Would you agree that it should be raised?
Yes, I would. I think it's disappointing to see significant investment in the airport without having the opportunity to take full advantage of the additional capacity that was made available. So, having 2 runways should allow Dublin Airport to expand. And I think the demand exists. I think the economy in Ireland will benefit as a result of that. So the cap, which I think was set in 2007, I see it very much as an artificial restriction on growth at Dublin Airport and on the Irish economy. And
just finally, you're focused on achieving net zero carbon emissions across the industry. Do we have an alternative jet fuel yet?
Well, we have sustainable aviation fuels. They are in production, but at very low volumes. We estimate that this year about just over half of 1%, 0.54% of total fuel used by the industry will come from sustainable sources. We want to see that ramped up significantly. We believe there's good reason to be optimistic that that will happen, and we're very confident that we can achieve net zero by 2050.
Willie Walsh, Director General of the International Air Transport Association, thank you very much for joining us from Geneva this morning.